A humble young woman accepts a job as a cleaner in a luxurious and isolated mansion, unaware of the secrets that dwell within. Soon she realizes that the strict rules, the silence of the staff, and the presence of an unsettling security guard hide something sinister. During her silent investigations, she discovers that the family matriarch is alive and has been imprisoned in the basement for 7 years. Now, amidst lies, threats, and constant surveillance, the young woman must prove the truth before silence once again dominates the house. If this story has piqued your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. Let's continue. The bus climbed the winding mountain road, cutting through the dense fog that covered the mountains of Aspen, Colorado, like a veil of mystery. Camilla pressed her forehead against the misty window, observing the imposing mansions that emerged among the pine trees. At 23, she carried on her shoulders a burden of responsibility no young woman should know so soon. Her mother, Mrs. Martha, had been ailing for months, and her 2 younger siblings, Ralph and Carol, depended entirely on her. The job at Bellevue Manor had arrived like a gift from fate, or at least that's how she wanted to believe. The employment agency in New York City had been clear. The vacancy was for a cleaner in a high-end property with an above-average salary and included accommodation. Camilla accepted without hesitation, even with her mother's worried gaze and the veiled warnings from the agency owner. That middle-aged woman, with reading glasses hanging around her neck, had whispered something about the house being isolated and the employers being quite demanding. But what else could she do? Medical bills were piling up, and each day, without work, was another anguish corroding her heart. The driver announced the stop with a tired voice. Camilla descended with her worn suitcase and a backpack on her shoulders, feeling the biting cold of the January afternoon penetrate her thin coat. The gate of Bellevue Manor rose before her like a fortress of black iron, crafted with arabesques that looked like intertwined serpents. She pressed the intercom and waited, hearing only the wind whistling through the trees. A feminine voice, cold and controlled, answered without any cordiality. "Good morning. Identify yourself." Camilla swallowed hard. "Good afternoon. I'm Camilla Ferreira, the new employee. I arrived from New York City as arranged." There was a brief pause, as if the person on the other side was evaluating each word. The gate began to open with a metallic creak that echoed through the empty property. Camilla crossed the threshold, feeling a strange sensation that she was crossing more than just a gate. It was as if she was entering a world apart, disconnected from the reality she knew. The entrance driveway was lined with tall, dark cypress trees. The manor emerged at the end of the path, imposing and cold, built of grey, stone with beveled glass windows that reflected the cloudy sky. There were no flowers in the gardens, only precisely pruned geometric shrubs and beds of white gravel. Everything there breathed order, control, and a coldness that Camilla had never felt anywhere else. The main door opened before she reached the staircase. A woman of about 40, dressed in an impeccable beige business suit, awaited her at the top of the steps. Her brown hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, and her dark brown eyes seemed to evaluate Camilla from head to toe, like someone examining merchandise. "Welcome," the woman said, but her tone carried no warmth. "I am Beatrice Hayes, the lady of this house. I hope you had a good journey." Camilla climbed the steps, feeling her legs tremble slightly. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. I'm ready to start." Beatrice looked at her for another long second before turning and entering the house. "Follow me. We have much to discuss." The interior of the manor was even more impressive and cold than the facade. The entrance hall had an exceptionally high ceiling, with a crystal chandelier hanging like a frozen jewel. The floor was polished marble where every step echoed with unsettling clarity. Antique dark wood furniture occupied the corners, and the walls displayed paintings of landscapes and portraits that seemed to observe every movement. Camilla noticed something curious. Some of the paintings were turned to face the wall as if someone didn't want to see them. She tried to disguise her curiosity, but Beatrice noticed her gaze. "Don't worry about the decor," Beatrice said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're doing some renovations, necessary changes. They walked down the main corridor and arrived at a smaller room, clearly intended for staff. There, Beatrice gestured, for Camilla to sit on a hard wooden chair, while she herself remained standing, flipping through a folder of documents. "I'll be direct, Camilla. This house operates with very specific rules, and I expect you to follow them strictly. I do not tolerate slips, delays, or questioning, understood?" "Yes, ma'am." Beatrice began to enumerate the rules in a monotonous voice, like someone reciting a memorized text. "You will work from 6 in the morning to 7 at night, with a 1-hour lunch break. Your function is to keep the east wing of the house clean, including the guest rooms, the library, and the public restrooms. Never, under any circumstances, should you enter the west wing. It is strictly forbidden." Camilla frowned. "May I ask why?" Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "No, you may not. It is a house rule, and that's final." The silence that followed was heavy. Camilla felt a chill run down her spine, but she nodded. Beatrice continued, now pointing to an old landline phone resting on a side table. "You must never answer that phone. If it rings, ignore it. Only my husband or I are permitted to answer it. Another important thing. At the end of the service corridor there is a metal door. Never approach it. It's a locked storage room and there's no reason for you to go there." Camilla felt her breath shorten. The rules made no sense, but she needed that job. "Understood, ma'am." Beatrice finally closed the folder and crossed her arms. "You will sleep in the back room near the kitchen. You will have your own things and a small bathroom. I expect you to be discreet, quiet, and efficient. My husband, Leonard, travels a lot for business. When he is home, maintain even greater discretion. He dislikes noise or interruptions." "Yes, ma'am." Beatrice led her through the corridors to the room that would be hers. It was a small but clean space with a single bed, a simple wardrobe, and a window that overlooked the back of the property, where an abandoned greenhouse and a winter garden that seemed to have been forgotten long ago were visible. "Rest today. Tomorrow at 6 sharp you start. The cook, Mrs. Irene, will guide you on meals. Any questions, come to me, but only if truly necessary." Beatrice left without waiting for a reply, leaving Camilla alone in that room that smelled of mothballs and loneliness. She sat on the bed, feeling the weight of the decision she had made. That house was not what she had imagined. There was something wrong, something she couldn't name, but it was there, present in every shadow, in every silent corner. She took out her cell phone and called her mother. Mrs. Martha's voice sounded weak but relieved. "Daughter, thank goodness. I was worried. How is the house?" Camilla looked around, choosing her words. "It's big, Mum. Very different from what we're used to. But I'll be fine. The salary is good. And I have a place to sleep. That's what matters. Be careful, daughter. Sometimes beautiful things on the outside hide ugly things on the inside." Camilla felt a lump in her throat. "I'll be careful, Mom. I promise. Kiss Ralph and Carol for me. Tell them I'll send money soon." They said goodbye with promises to call again the next day. Camilla put away her phone and lay down, looking at the cracked ceiling. The sound of the wind hitting the windows seemed like a muffled lament, and she closed her eyes, trying to ward off the growing unease in her chest. The first night was disturbing. Camilla woke up several times to strange noises, slow footsteps in the corridor, as if someone was dragging their feet, the creak of a door opening somewhere distant, and, at one point, she swore she heard muffled crying, so faint it seemed to come from inside the walls. In the morning, descending to the kitchen, she found Mrs. Irene, a woman of about 60, with grey hair tied in a loose bun and tired eyes that seemed to have seen more than they should have. She was preparing coffee when Camilla entered and smiled shyly. "Good morning, dear. You must be the new girl. I'm Irene, the cook." "Good morning, Mrs. Irene. Nice to meet you. I'm Camilla." Irene served coffee with milk and toasted bread, and the two sat at the small table in the back pantry. Camilla noticed that the woman seemed nervous, constantly looking at the door as if expecting someone to suddenly appear. "Mrs. Irene, may I ask a question?" The cook hesitated but nodded. "Why are some of the paintings in the living room turned to face the wall?" Irene averted her gaze, stirring her coffee with unnecessary force. "Those are Mrs. Hayes's orders. She said they are renovations, but I don't ask anything. It's better not to ask questions here, dear. Just work and be quiet. Camilla felt a shiver. But why? What's wrong with this house? Irene stood up abruptly, taking her cup to the sink. Nothing is wrong. It's just a house like any other. Now finish your coffee. Mrs. Hayes doesn't like delays. The first day of work was exhausting. Camilla cleaned enormous rooms that seemed never to have been used, polished antique furniture, and mopped floors that already gleamed. Beatrice appeared from time to time to inspect the work, always with that critical and icy gaze. Late in the afternoon, while putting away cleaning supplies in the service corridor closet, Camilla saw the metal door for the first time. It was a heavy door, painted grey, with no visible doorknob, just an old lock. She approached cautiously, feeling a strange force pulling her towards that forbidden place. Suddenly, a deep voice made her jump in fright. "Don't go near there." Camilla turned and found herself facing a tall man with broad shoulders and a grim expression. He wore dark clothes and had a security badge clipped to his shirt pocket. His eyes were small and piercing, and he watched her with a suspicion that made her heart race. "Sorry, I was just putting away the cleaning materials," Camilla stammered, backing away from the door. The man took a step forward. "My name is Gerald. I'm the property's security guard, and if Mrs. Hayes said not to go near that door, you'd better obey. We don't want trouble, do we?" Camilla swallowed hard. "Of course. I won't go near it again." Gerald continued to look at her for a few more seconds, as if memorizing her face, before turning and disappearing down the corridor. Camilla ran back to her room, her heart pounding. There was something very wrong with that house, and she was beginning to realize she had gotten herself into a situation much bigger than she had imagined. In the following days, Camilla began to observe everything with heightened attention. She noticed that Beatrice disappeared every night for about an hour, always carrying a tray covered with a white cloth. She would go down the stairs to the basement and return with the empty tray. When Camilla questioned Mrs. Irene about the basement, the cook turned pale and merely said it was a storage area and no one was allowed to go down there. One morning, while cleaning the library, Camilla found an old book forgotten among newer volumes. As she leafed through it, a photograph fell to the floor. She picked it up and felt her blood run cold. It was the image of an elderly woman with white hair and kind eyes, sitting in a flower garden next to a younger man who smiled openly. On the back of the photo, handwritten, was the date: December 2021. Only 3 years ago. Camilla looked around. That woman was the same one in the paintings turned to the wall in the living room. She was sure of it. But why were her photos hidden? And who was the man next to her? The answer came that same afternoon, when an imported car pulled up to the manor's entrance. Beatrice went out to greet the visitor, and Camilla, from the second-floor window, saw the man get out of the vehicle. It was the same man from the photograph, only older, with streaks of grey in his temples and a tired expression on his face. He quickly embraced Beatrice without any warmth and entered the house. Mrs. Irene appeared beside Camilla, looking out the same window. "It's Mr. Leonard, the owner of the house. He's back from his trip." Camilla looked at the cook. "And the woman in the photo? Who is she?" Irene tensed. "What photo?" Camilla showed her the image she had kept in her apron pocket. "I found it in the library. It's her, isn't it? The woman from the turned-around paintings." Irene's eyes widened and she took the photo with trembling hands. "Where did you find this?" "Among the books." The cook looked around, making sure they were alone. "That's Mrs. Helen, Mr. Leonard's mother. She is no longer with us, at least that's what they say." "What do you mean?" Irene quickly returned the photo, as if it burned her hands. "I can't talk about it. Please forget what you saw. But she's in the photo with him just 3 years ago." "What happened?" Irene moved away, visibly shaken. "I don't know anything, dear, and you shouldn't either. Keep that photo and never mention Mrs. Helen's name in this house again. It's dangerous." Camilla was left alone, holding the photograph, as if it were a bomb about to explode. That night, lying in her bed, she pieced together the puzzle that was beginning to form. A woman who should have been dead for years, but whose recent photo existed. Paintings turned to the wall, a locked metal door, mysterious trays taken to the basement every night, and a heavy silence that covered the house like a blanket of secrets. Camilla knew she was entering dangerous territory, but something inside her, a force she couldn't explain, compelled her to discover the truth. That mansion, so perfect on the outside, hid something dark, and she was determined to unravel this mystery, even if it meant risking everything she had achieved so far. In the silent corridors of Bellevue Manor, amidst shadows and whispers, a young cleaner began to realize that she had been hired not only to clean floors but to witness a truth someone desperately wanted to keep hidden, and the closer she got to that truth, the more she felt there was no turning back. The manor had chosen her, and now it was up to her to decide if she would have the courage to face the ghosts that inhabited those cold corridors. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, as Camilla closed her eyes and made a silent promise. She would find out what had happened to Mrs. Helen. She would find out why that house breathed fear, and somehow she would find a way to bring the truth to light, even if it meant confronting Mrs. Beatrice herself and all the secrets she so jealously guarded. The journey was just beginning, and Camilla did not yet know how much her life would change in the coming days. The days at Bellevue Manor began to merge into a suffocating routine. Camilla woke before dawn, when the mountain cold still froze the air, and began her tasks always under the watchful eye of Beatrice or Gerald, the security guard who seemed to appear out of nowhere at the most unexpected moments. The house was too big, too silent, and had too many dark corners where secrets seemed to accumulate like dust. Camilla couldn't get Mrs. Helen out of her head. That photograph found in the library haunted her day and night. Whenever she closed her eyes, she saw the gentle face of the elderly woman smiling next to her. "Son?" And the question hammered in her mind like an insistent drum. Where was she? Why did everyone pretend she no longer existed? And why was Beatrice so determined to erase any trace of her presence? On the morning of a cloudy Thursday, while cleaning the second-floor corridor, Camilla heard voices coming from Leonard's office. The door was ajar, and she recognized her employer's deep voice mixed with Beatrice's controlled tone. She approached slowly, pretending to organize the cleaning products on the cart, and strained her ears. "You need to sign these documents today, Leonard. The lawyers are waiting," Beatrice said with poorly disguised urgency. "Beatrice, I've signed so many papers since my mother left. I don't understand why there are always more." "They are necessary formalities. The transfer of assets, the regularization of the company, everything needs to be in order. You know how demanding the market is." There was a pause. "Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying her memory. It all happened so fast. I never quite understood what led her to leave home like that." Beatrice's voice softened, but Camilla perceived the falsity that permeated every word. "Leonard, you were going through a difficult time. Your depression was intense. Your mother was confused, saying nonsensical things, threatening the family. It was painful for everyone, but she chose to leave. There was nothing to be done." Camilla felt anger boil in her veins. Beatrice was manipulating Leonard, making him believe a version of events that clearly did not correspond to reality. She needed to discover more, but she needed help. She couldn't do this alone. That afternoon, after lunch, Camilla decided to talk to Mrs. Irene again. She found the cook in the pantry, organizing cans of preserves with slow, methodical movements. The woman seemed more dejected than usual, with deep, dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. "Mrs. Irene, we need to talk," Camilla said in a low voice, closing the door behind her. Irene turned, startled. "Dear, I already told you I don't want to talk about anything. I know you're scared, but something terrible is happening in this house. Mrs. Helen didn't run away, did she? She's here, somewhere." Irene's eyes filled with tears. "How do you know that?" Camilla took a deep breath. "I heard things. I saw things. The trays Mrs. Hayes takes every night, the locked basement, the turned-around paintings, and this photograph." She again showed the image of Mrs. Helen with Leonard. Irene took the photo with trembling fingers and began to sob softly, covering her mouth with her hand to muffle the sound. "Mrs. Helen was such a good woman, so kind. She helped me when my son got sick, paid for his treatment, took care of me as if I were family. And now she's there, trapped, alone, and I do nothing." Camilla held the cook's hands. "Did you see Mrs. Helen? Do you know where she is?" Irene wiped her tears and looked around, terrified. "Once, a few months ago, I accidentally went down to the basement. I forgot a bag of potatoes down there and went to get it. I saw Mrs. Hayes coming out of a door I had never seen before, carrying a tray with leftover food. Food that I myself had prepared, but which she had taken earlier. I asked what it was and she told me they were leftovers she kept for the neighbors' dogs. But we don't have close neighbors here." "And what did you do?" "Nothing. I was scared." Beatrice looked at me in a way that made me understand I shouldn't ask questions. The next day, Gerald started working here. He watches everything, every corner, every person. Since then, I've never gone down to the basement again. Camilla felt adrenaline rush through her veins. "We need to do something. We can't leave Mrs. Helen there, wherever she is." Irene gripped Camilla's arm tightly. "You don't understand. Beatrice is dangerous. She has contacts, documents, lawyers. She made Mr. Leonard believe his own mother abandoned him. She has power over all of us. If we try something and fail, she will destroy us." Camilla raised her chin. "Then we need to make sure we succeed. But first I need proof. I need to know exactly where Mrs. Helen is and in what condition. Do you know anyone else in this house we can trust?" Irene thought for a moment. "The gardener, Mr. Walter. He's been working here for over 20 years. He's known Mrs. Helen forever. And the driver, Roger, he's also been here a long time. But I don't know if they'd have the courage to get involved." "I'll try to talk to them. Can you help me?" Irene hesitated, but finally nodded. "I'll do what I can, but be careful, dear. Beatrice has eyes everywhere." That afternoon, Camilla went out to the garden on the pretext of airing the rugs. She found Mr. Walter, a man of about 60, with sunburnt skin and calloused hands, pruning the rose bushes that grew around the abandoned greenhouse. He greeted her with a nod, without interrupting his work. "Mr. Walter, may I ask a question?" He looked at her sideways. "Depends on the question, dear." "Did you know Mrs. Helen?" Walter's hands stopped mid-movement. He placed the pruning shears on the ground and straightened up, looking around to make sure they were alone. "Why are you asking about her?" "Because I don't think she died. I think she's alive, and I think she's in danger." Walter closed his eyes for a moment, as if making a difficult decision. "Mrs. Helen was the best boss I ever had. She planted these rose bushes with her own hands. She used to say that flowers brought life to the house. When she disappeared, everything here became grey, cold, colourless. Mrs. Hayes ordered half the flowers to be pulled out, said they were too much trouble to care for." "Did you see her before she disappeared?" "I did. She was different, quieter, sadder. She said she felt something was wrong but didn't know what. A few days later, Mrs. Hayes announced that she had run away, that she was confused in her head, that she had threatened the family. I never believed that. Mrs. Helen loved her son more than anything in this world. She would never abandon him." Camilla felt she was on the right track. "Do you have any proof? Anything that can help me discover the truth?" Walter scratched his grey beard. "I have something. A few days before Mrs. Helen disappeared, she gave me an old camera she used to photograph the garden. She said she wanted me to keep it, that it was important. I never understood why, but I kept it at home. It has some rolls of film inside. I never developed them." Camilla felt her heart race. "This could be important. Can you bring me that camera?" Walter hesitated. "If Mrs. Hayes finds out, I'll lose my job. Maybe something worse." "I know. But if we don't do anything, Mrs. Helen will stay where she is. And who knows for how much longer." The gardener sighed deeply. "All right. I'll bring the camera tomorrow, but do you promise to be careful?" "I promise." In the following days, Camilla also spoke with Roger, the driver, a middle-aged man with dark hair slicked back and a thin mustache. He was harder to convince, but when she mentioned Mrs. Helen and showed him the photograph, his eyes filled with contained emotion. "Mrs. Helen was always very kind to me. When my wife got sick, she gave me days off without deducting from my salary. She always asked how my children were. When she disappeared, I cried as if I had lost Someone from my family. Do you believe she ran away? Roger shook his head vehemently. Never. I drove her everywhere. I knew her habits, her tastes. She wouldn't have run away without at least saying goodbye to me or Walter. And another thing. In the last few months before she vanished, she asked me to take documents to her lawyer. Documents that, according to her, would ensure the company remained protected. A few days later, the lawyer had a car accident. Nothing serious, but enough for him to retire and leave the profession. I found it strange. Was Beatrice involved? In this? I have no proof, but I know she has her own lawyer, a man who looks more like a vulture than a professional, and I know that shortly after Mrs. Helen's disappearance, many company documents were altered. I overheard conversations, saw papers. Camilla felt she was assembling the puzzle. Roger, I need your help. We need to gather proof and confront the truth. He took a deep breath. I'm willing to help, but we have to be smart. Beatrice is cunning and dangerous. We will be. Walter kept his promise. The next day he handed Camilla an old, analog camera made of silver metal with 2 rolls of film still intact inside. She put the camera at the bottom of her wardrobe, hidden among clothes and blankets, and began to plan the next step. One night, when Beatrice was out for a meeting in the city and Gerald was on his external rounds, Camilla decided it was time to take a risk. She waited until she was sure all the other staff were in their rooms and crept stealthily down the service corridor towards the basement. The stairs leading to the basement were narrow and dimly lit. Each step creaked under her feet, and she felt her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone in the house could hear it. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a damp corridor with stone walls and a smell of mold. There were several doors along the corridor, but one of them, the furthest, had a different lock from the others. A heavy, old lock, the kind that could only be opened with a specific key. Camilla approached and put her ear against the wood. Absolute silence. She tried the doorknob, but it was locked. She looked around and saw a small gap under the door, through which a cold draft passed. She knelt down and tried to look, but it was too dark. Suddenly she heard footsteps coming from the stairs. She panicked. She looked around desperately and saw a door ajar a few meters behind her. She ran and hid inside, closing the door almost completely, leaving only a crack to observe. Beatrice came down the stairs, carrying the covered tray as she did every night. She stopped in front of the locked door, took a key from her coat pocket, and unlocked it with precise movements. She opened the door just enough to enter, and Camilla heard a muffled sound as if someone had tried to speak, but their mouth was covered. Camilla's heart almost stopped. It was there. Mrs. Helen was there, behind that door. Beatrice stayed inside the room for about 10 minutes, and when she came out, she locked the door again and went up the stairs with the empty tray. Camilla waited until she was sure she was alone again, and came out of her hiding place, her legs trembling. She knew now where Mrs. Helen was, but she needed a way to get into that room, to photograph, to have concrete proof. She needed that key. In the following days, Camilla observed Beatrice's every move. She noticed that Beatrice kept the key in a small leather purse that she always carried with her. The only time she separated from the purse was during her bath, and even then she left it in the locked bedroom. Camilla needed a distraction, something that would make Beatrice leave the key unprotected long enough for her to make a copy. She talked to Mrs. Irene, Walter, and Roger, and together they devised a plan. On the morning of a Monday, Roger pretended the car had broken down just as Beatrice needed to leave for an important meeting in the city. She was furious and went down to the garage to check the problem. Meanwhile, Camilla, who had observed where Beatrice kept the purse in the bedroom, quickly went up, took the key, and went down to the basement. Her hands trembled so much she could barely fit the key into the lock. Finally, the door opened with a deep creak. What she saw inside made her stagger. It was a small damp room with bare stone walls and a single dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the corner, on a thin, dirty mattress, was Mrs. Helen. The woman looked like a shadow of her former self, extremely thin, with tangled and dirty white hair, torn and stained clothes, and chains attached to her ankles that prevented her from moving more than a few steps. Mrs. Helen raised her face when she saw Camilla, and her eyes, once bright in the photograph, were now dull and frightened. "Who are you?" she whispered in a hoarse voice. Camilla entered the room, tears streaming down her face. "My name is Camilla. I work here. I came to help you." The woman began to cry silently. "I thought no one would find me. I thought I was going to die here." Camilla took the camera from the bag she had brought hidden under her apron. "I need to photograph this. I need to have proof. Can you hold on for a few more days?" Mrs. Helen nodded, tears wetting her wrinkled cheeks. "I can. But please get me out of here. My son, my Leonard, does he know I'm here?" "No. He thinks you ran away." Beatrice made him believe that. "That woman, she tricked me. She said I was sick, that I needed treatment, that it would be temporary. But she imprisoned me here and never let me out. She stole everything from me." Camilla took several photos. Mrs. Helen's face, the chains, the dirty room, every detail documented with that old camera. "I'm going to get help. I'm going to bring your son here, I promise." "Be careful. Beatrice is dangerous. She has a man, Gerald, who does everything she tells him." "I know. I'll be careful." Camilla left, locked the door again, and rushed upstairs to return the key before Beatrice came back. She managed to put it back in the purse seconds before hearing her employer's footsteps coming up the stairs. That night, she met with Irene, Walter, and Roger in the garden, away from the house, and told them what she had seen. Everyone was in shock, but also relieved to know that Mrs. Helen was alive. "Now we need to develop the films and show them to Mr. Leonard," Camilla said. "He needs to see the truth with his own eyes." Roger nodded. "I know a place in the city where we can develop them without raising suspicion. Tomorrow, when I go to get groceries, I'll take the films." "And then?" Irene asked. "Beatrice will know it was us. Then we face the consequences. But at least Mrs. Helen will be free." The four made a silent pact that night. They were together until the end, no matter what happened. The manor that once seemed invincible now showed its cracks, and through them, the light of truth began to penetrate, even if it was still just a faint beam amidst the darkness. The day dawned gray over Aspen, Colorado, with heavy clouds that promised rain. Camilla had barely slept. The image of Mrs. Helen chained in that damp, dark basement haunted her every time she closed her eyes. How could one person do that to another? How could Beatrice sleep peacefully every night, knowing she kept an elderly woman in such inhumane conditions? Roger had left early for the city on the pretext of getting groceries from the market. He carried the 2 rolls of film from the old camera, hidden at the bottom of a shopping bag. Camilla spent the entire morning on high alert, cleaning the same furniture multiple times, unable to concentrate on anything else. Every noise made her jump, every shadow in the corridor seemed threatening. Beatrice was particularly irritated that day. Camilla saw her arguing on the phone in the office, her raised voice echoing through the corridors. She couldn't understand what she was saying, but the tone was one of annoyance and urgency. When Beatrice finally hung up, she left the office with a red face and passed Camilla without even looking at her, descending the stairs towards the basement. Mrs. Irene appeared beside Camilla with a worried expression. "She's nervous. It's not a good sign." "Why do you think that?" "Because when she gets like this, she becomes even more dangerous. You need to be careful, dear." Camilla nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Roger was due back in the early afternoon with the developed photos. After that, everything would change. There would be no turning back. The hours dragged on as if time had decided to stop. Camilla tried to keep busy, but every passing minute increased her anxiety. When she finally heard the sound of the car in the driveway. At 3 in the afternoon, she ran to the window and saw Roger parking. He got out of the vehicle with the shopping bags and gave a discreet nod. He had succeeded. Camilla waited until Beatrice was locked in the office on an important call to go down to the pantry, where Roger was already waiting with Mrs. Irene and Walter. The driver took a yellow envelope from inside his jacket and placed it on the table carefully, as if it were something sacred. "I managed to get them developed at a small shop far from here. The owner didn't ask questions. But dear, when I saw the photos, I almost couldn't believe it. It's worse than we imagined." He opened the envelope and spread the photographs on the table. Everyone was silent, looking at the images that documented the horror. Mrs. Helen chained, thin, dirty, with a lost gaze. The dark, damp room, the rusty chains, the mouldy walls. It was undeniable proof that Beatrice had kept her mother-in-law prisoner for years. Irene put her hands to her mouth, stifling a sob. My God, how could she do this? Walter clenched his fists, his eyes filled with tears of contained anger. This woman is a monster. Camilla carefully picked up the photos. Now we need to show these to Mr. Leonard. When will he return from his trip? Roger consulted an agenda he always carried. He arrives tomorrow evening, coming back from New York City. Then we have less than a day to prepare. When he arrives, I'll intercept him before Beatrice can talk to him. I'll show him the photos and tell him everything. What if he doesn't believe? Irene asked. Beatrice manipulated him for years. He trusts her. That's why we have the photos, Walter said. He might doubt words, but he can't deny what his eyes see. Suddenly the pantry door burst open. Gerald stood in the doorway, his small eyes fixed on the gathered group. Everyone froze. Camilla instinctively hid the photos behind her back, but she knew it was too late. He had seen them. What are you plotting? Gerald asked in a low, threatening voice, entering the pantry and closing the door behind him. No one answered. Gerald took another step forward, and Camilla saw that he carried a small two-way radio on his belt. If he called Beatrice, everything would be lost. I asked, "What are you plotting?" Gerald repeated, now louder. Camilla raised her chin, deciding there was no longer any point in hiding. We're trying to save an innocent woman who is being held prisoner in this house, and you know that, don't you? You helped Beatrice keep Mrs. Helen locked up. Gerald did not deny it. His face remained impassive. I do my job, I get paid for it, and you are getting involved in something that doesn't concern you. It concerns any decent human being, Walter said, standing up and confronting the security guard. That woman is being tortured. You are an accomplice to this. Gerald took a threatening step towards Walter, but Roger placed himself between them. Calm down, we don't need violence. Gerald, you have a choice. You can call Beatrice now and continue to be a part of this monstrosity, or you can do the right thing. And what would be the right thing? Lose my job? Be prosecuted? Beatrice has false evidence against me. I have no choice. Camilla felt a pang of compassion. Perhaps Gerald wasn't the villain she imagined. Perhaps he was just another victim of Beatrice. You said she has false evidence. Does that mean she's blackmailing you? Gerald averted his gaze. I had problems in the past. I did some things I'm not proud of. Beatrice found out and offered me this job on the condition that I turn a blind eye to what happens here. She said if I refused or said anything, she would report me, and I would go back to prison. So you're also her prisoner, Camilla said softly. Just like Mrs. Helen. Just like all of us, in a way. Gerald looked at the photographs Camilla still held. What do you intend to do? Show these photos to Mr. Leonard tomorrow when he arrives. He deserves to know the truth about what his wife did to his own mother. Gerald remained silent for a long moment, clearly conflicted. Finally, he sighed deeply. If you do this, Beatrice will know someone betrayed her. She will come after all of you. We already know that, Camilla said, but we can't leave Mrs. Helen in that basement for another day. She has suffered too much. Gerald ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly tired and old. You are brave, or very foolish. Beatrice is not what you think. She is capable of anything to protect what she has built here. Then help us, Camilla pleaded. Join us. Together we can face her. Gerald looked at each of them. I don't know if I have that courage. It's not about courage, Walter said. It's about doing what's right. Mrs. Helen always treated everyone who worked for her well. She doesn't deserve to die in that dark hole. Gerald finally nodded, defeated. All right. I won't report you. But I can't do much more than that. If Beatrice finds out I knew and didn't tell, she will destroy me. That's enough, Camilla said. We just need you not to hinder us. When Gerald left the pantry, the group breathed a sigh of relief. They had gained another ally, albeit a reluctant one, but the feeling of danger did not diminish. On the contrary, it seemed to have increased. The rest of the day passed in constant tension. Beatrice circulated through the house like a bird of prey, her eyes attentive to every movement. Camilla was certain that she suspected something, but she didn't know exactly what. At night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Camilla put the photographs in a sealed envelope and hid it under her mattress. She couldn't sleep. She got up and went to the window, looking out at the dark garden illuminated only by the faint moonlight. The rose bushes that Mrs. Helen had planted swayed in the wind, as if whispering ancient secrets. Suddenly, she saw a light turn on in the garden. Someone was out there. She narrowed her eyes and recognized Beatrice's silhouette, walking towards the abandoned greenhouse. What could she be doing there at that hour? Camilla quickly dressed and went out the back door, staying in the shadows. She approached the greenhouse carefully, hiding behind a tree. Beatrice was inside the glass structure, looking for something among the empty shelves and broken pots. She seemed nervous, searching every corner with a flashlight. Finally, Beatrice found what she was looking for. It was an old notebook, hidden behind a wooden beam. She opened it and quickly flipped through the pages, mumbling something unintelligible. Then, with a sudden movement, she tore out several pages, crumpled them, and put them in her coat pocket. Camilla tried to see more, but stepped on a dry twig that snapped under her foot. Beatrice instantly turned towards the sound, pointing the flashlight. "Who's there?" Camilla crouched behind the tree, her heart pounding. She heard Beatrice's footsteps approaching and prayed not to be discovered. The flashlight illuminated the area around her, but luckily did not reach her. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, Beatrice gave up and returned to the house. Camilla waited a few more minutes before coming out of hiding. She entered the greenhouse and looked for the notebook Beatrice had found. It was still there, on the shelf, but with several pages missing. She picked up the notebook and opened it to the first page. It was a diary. Mrs. Helen's diary. Camilla's. Hands trembled as she read the first lines written in delicate and careful handwriting. August 23rd, 2017. Today I realized that Beatrice is changing the company documents. When I questioned her, she said they were just necessary updates, but something in her eyes made me suspicious. Leonard trusts her so much that he can't see what I see. I need to investigate more. Camilla continued reading, skipping to another entry. September 5th, 2017. I spoke with the family lawyer. He told me that some documents were altered without my authorization, signatures that are not mine. When I confronted Beatrice, she became furious. She said I was becoming senile, that I was imagining things. Leonard defended her. I feel like I'm losing my son to her. Tears streamed down Camilla's face as she read. Mrs. Helen had noticed everything, but no one had listened to her. September 18th, 2017. I'm scared. Beatrice brought me a cup of tea last night, and after drinking it, I felt very ill. Dizziness, mental confusion, nausea. Is she slowly poisoning me? It seems crazy to think this, but every day I feel weaker, more confused. I need to hide this diary before she finds it. The last entry dated a few days before Mrs. Helen's disappearance, September 27th, 2017. Beatrice told me I need specialized treatment, that I will stay in a quiet place for a while, but her eyes are full of malice. I am sure she is planning something terrible. If anyone finds this diary, know that I did not run away. Know that I would never abandon my son. If something happens to me, it was Beatrice. Camilla closed the diary with trembling hands. This was more proof. Another piece of the puzzle that proved Beatrice's monstrosity. She put the notebook inside her coat and ran back to the house, silently entering the same way she had left. The next day, the tension in the manor was palpable. Beatrice was even more nervous, making constant phone calls and giving contradictory orders to the staff. Camilla realized that she was looking for something, probably the pages she had torn from the diary or the notebook itself. In the afternoon, Beatrice called Walter to the office. When the gardener returned, he was pale and shaken. He found Camilla in the corridor and whispered hurriedly. She fired me, said I'm too old for the job. Gave me 2 hours to pack my things and leave. Camilla felt her blood run cold. She's getting rid of all of us. She knows something is happening. That same afternoon, Mrs. Irene and another employee, the laundress, were also dismissed under false accusations. The house, already silent, became a mausoleum. Only Camilla, Roger, and Gerald remained. Roger sought Camilla in the kitchen, visibly frightened. "She's cleaning house, getting rid of everyone who might know something. Tomorrow, when Mr. Leonard arrives, we'll have no one to support us." "We still have the photos and the diary," Camilla said with determination. "It's enough." But that night something happened that changed everything. Camilla was awakened by a noise in the corridor. She got up and opened the door, seeing Beatrice standing in front of her room with her arms crossed and a cold smile on her face. Behind her, Gerald held a flashlight. "Camilla Ferreira," Beatrice said in a voice that was too calm, "I think you and I need to have a conversation. Now." Camilla felt fear take over her body, but she raised her chin. "About what?" "About your tendency to poke. Your nose where it doesn't belong. Come with me." Beatrice led her to the office. Gerald stood outside the door like a guard. Inside, Beatrice sat behind the desk and gestured for Camilla to sit in the chair opposite her. "I know you've been snooping," Beatrice began. "I know you found things you shouldn't have, and I know you're planning something for when my husband returns." Camilla didn't answer, but her eyes didn't stray from Beatrice's. "I'm going to make you an offer," Beatrice continued, opening a drawer and taking out a thick envelope. "Here's enough money for you to get your mother the best treatment available. I also have contacts who can get you a job in New York City, a better job than this one. All I need is for you to pack your things, leave this house early tomorrow, and forget everything you saw here." "And if I refuse?" Beatrice leaned forward, her dark eyes gleaming with a chilling coldness. "Then I'll use the contacts I have to ensure your mother loses the public health services she receives. I'll ensure your siblings are removed from school. I will destroy your family, Camilla, and don't think I'm bluffing. I have resources and people who owe me favors in strategic places." Camilla felt tears burn her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You are a monster. I am a woman who protects what is hers. This house, this company, all of this should have been mine from the beginning. That old woman was in the way, and so are you. Mrs. Helen is your mother-in-law. How can you do this to her?" Beatrice shrugged. She was weak, and the weak don't survive in this world. Camilla stood up, her legs trembling but her determination unshakable. "I will not accept your money, and I will not keep silent. Tomorrow, when Mr. Leonard arrives, he will know everything." Beatrice also stood up, her face red with rage. "You will regret this. Perhaps, but at least I'll sleep with a clear conscience." Camilla left the office and returned to her room, locking the door from the inside. She sat on the bed, trembling with fear and adrenaline. She had crossed the line. There was no turning back. Tomorrow would be the day of truth, and she only hoped she was prepared for the consequences that would come. The dawn brought a dense fog that shrouded Bellevue Manor like a pall. Camilla had barely slept more than a few fitful hours, waking with a racing heart at every sound. Beatrice's threats echoed in her mind, but whenever she felt her courage waver, she remembered Mrs. Helen's suffering face chained in that dark, damp basement. She couldn't give up now. She got up before 6 in the morning and checked for the 10th time that the envelope with the photographs and Mrs. Helen's diary were well hidden inside her backpack. Today would be the day. Leonard would arrive late in the afternoon, and she would do everything to intercept him before Beatrice could poison his mind with more lies. She went down to the kitchen and found only Roger, who was drinking coffee with a tense expression. Mrs. Irene and the other staff had already left the night before, and the house seemed even emptier and more hostile than ever. "Good morning," Camilla whispered, pouring herself coffee. Roger looked around before replying in a low voice. "Gerald told me Beatrice was awake all night, making calls. She's nervous. She knows something is going to happen." "Today's the day, Roger. We can't fail." The driver nodded. "I'm picking up Mr. Leonard at Denver International Airport at 5 in the afternoon. I'll try to prepare him on the way, but you know how he is. He might not believe me." "That's why we have the proof. He'll have to believe when he sees the photos." The hours of that day dragged on torturously. Camilla cleaned the house mechanically, always keeping an eye on Beatrice, who circulated through the corridors like a vigilant sentinel. Around noon, her employer called her to the living room. "Camilla," Beatrice said with a voice cold as ice, her eyes fixed on hers. "Have you reconsidered my offer from yesterday?" Camilla swallowed hard, but maintained her firm posture. "I have nothing to reconsider. My decision is made." Beatrice's face hardened. "Then may God help you, because I won't." The afternoon arrived, enveloped in an almost palpable tension. At 4:30, Roger left to pick up Leonard at Denver International Airport. Beatrice went up to her room to get ready, and Camilla took the opportunity to check once more if she had everything she needed. The photographs, the diary, her courage. It was all or nothing. When she heard the sound of the car coming up the driveway at 5:40, Camilla ran to the window. She saw Roger park and Leonard get out of the vehicle, dressed in a dark suit, a leather briefcase in his hand, and a tired expression on his face. He seemed to have aged since she last saw him, with more white streaks in his hair and deep dark circles under his eyes. Camilla rushed down the service stairs and positioned herself strategically in the entrance hall before Leonard reached the main door. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Leonard opened the door and stopped when he saw Camilla standing there, clearly waiting for him. He frowned, confused. "Good afternoon. You're the new employee, aren't you?" "Yes, sir. My name is Camilla. I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Leonard looked around. "Where's my wife?" "She's in her room, sir. But please, I need you to listen to me before you speak with her. It's about your mother." Leonard's face immediately closed. "My mother is no longer with us. I don't know what they told you, but it's not a topic for discussion. Your mother is alive, Mr. Leonard, and she's been held prisoner in the basement of this house for years." Leonard recoiled as if he had been punched. "What? That's absurd. Who put these ideas in your head?" "No one, sir. I discovered it myself, and I have proof." Camilla took the envelope from her backpack and held it out to him with trembling hands. "Please look at the photographs. Then, if you still think I'm lying, you can send me away, and I'll never bother you again." Leonard hesitated, but something in Camilla's determined eyes made him take the envelope. He opened it slowly and took out the photographs. When he saw the first image, his face went pale. He continued to flip through the photos one by one, his hands visibly starting to tremble. "This can't be real," he murmured, his voice failing. "This can't be my mother." "It is, sir. And there's more. I found her diary hidden in the greenhouse." Camilla handed him the notebook. Leonard opened it to the last page and read the words written by his own mother days before her disappearance. Tears began to stream down his face, wetting the yellowed pages. Suddenly, Beatrice's voice echoed from the top of the staircase. "Leonard, my love, you've arrived." She began to descend the stairs with a smile that froze when she saw the photographs in her husband's hands. Her expression changed instantly, her eyes narrowing with anger and calculation. "What's going on here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice controlled. Leonard raised his face to her, his eyes red and filled with a mixture of pain and fury. "What's going on is that this young woman has just shown me proof that you kept my mother prisoner in the basement of this house for years." Beatrice quickly descended the last steps. "This is ridiculous. She's lying. These photos must be fake, doctored." "They're real," Camilla said firmly. "And the diary, too. It's all written in Mrs. Helen's own hand." Beatrice turned to Camilla with distilled hatred in her eyes. I warned you what would happen if you didn't accept my offer." "What offer?" Leonard asked, still holding the photos. "It doesn't matter," Beatrice replied, trying to compose herself. "Leonard, you can't believe this girl. She's trying to manipulate us. Your mother is dead. You know that. Then why do these photos exist? Why does her diary specifically mention you? Why did she write that she was afraid of you?" Beatrice opened and closed her mouth, searching for words. She was confused, senile. She wrote those things because she was losing her mind. Leonard took a step towards his wife. "Where is the basement key?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "The key, Beatrice." "Now." Beatrice recoiled, but Leonard advanced. His posture, normally stooped by the weight of depression and grief, was erect and determined. For the first time in years, he seemed to have regained the strength that Beatrice had spent so long undermining. "I don't have any key," Beatrice said, but her voice trembled. Leonard turned to Camilla. "Where is that door you mentioned?" "At the end of the service corridor, sir, in the basement." Leonard began to walk in that direction. Beatrice tried to grab his arm, but he shook her off forcefully. "Don't touch me." They went down the stairs leading to the basement, followed by Beatrice and Camilla. Roger and Gerald also appeared, drawn by the commotion. When they reached the metal door, Leonard tried to open it, but it was locked. "Open that door," he ordered, turning to Beatrice. "No." "Open it or I'll break it down." Beatrice crossed her arms, defiant. "You can try." Leonard looked around and saw an iron bar leaning against the wall, used for opening crates. He picked it up and began to force the door. The old wood and rusty lock gave way after a few violent blows. The door swung open with a loud creak. What Leonard saw inside the room made him stagger. Mrs. Helen was sitting in the corner, chained, thinner and more fragile than in the photographs, her eyes wide with fear and surprise. When she recognized her son, her hands flew to her face and she began to sob convulsively. "Leonard, my son, you came." Leonard crossed the room like a man in a trance and knelt before his mother, pulling her into his arms. "Mother, my God, Mother, what did she do to you?" Mrs. Helen clung to her son as if she feared he would disappear. "I thought you had forgotten me. I thought I would never get out of here. Never, Mother, never. I'm so sorry, so very sorry." Beatrice tried to flee, but Gerald, in a moment of redemption, blocked her path. "Not so. Fast, Mrs. Hayes. I think the police will want to speak with you." Leonard stood up, his face transfigured by rage. "Release my mother from those chains. Now!" Beatrice, cornered, took a small key from her pocket and threw it on the floor. Leonard picked it up and unlocked the shackles that bound Mrs. Helen's ankles. The skin beneath the chains was wounded and inflamed, marks of years of imprisonment. "Let's get her out of here," Leonard said, gently picking his mother up in his arms as if she were made of glass. They slowly climbed the stairs. Leonard carried Mrs. Helen to the main bedroom, the one that had once been hers and that Beatrice had taken for herself. He laid her gently on the bed and covered her with clean, soft blankets. Camilla brought water and a light broth that she quickly warmed. Mrs. Helen drank in small sips, tears still streaming down her wrinkled face marked by suffering. Leonard called the police and a private doctor. Within an hour, the manor was full of people, police officers, paramedics, a doctor who examined Mrs. Helen and determined that she needed to be hospitalized immediately for severe malnutrition and dehydration. Beatrice tried to argue, tried to use her manipulative cunning to convince the police that everything was a misunderstanding, but the evidence was irrefutable. The photographs, the diary, Mrs. Helen's testimony, the marks of the chains, everything pointed to the horrible truth. When they tried to arrest her, Beatrice tried to run but was restrained by 2 police officers. "You'll regret this, Leonard. You'll lose everything. Without me, you are nothing." Leonard looked at her with a coldness she had never seen before. "I already lost everything when I lost my mother, but now I have her back, and that's more than you could ever understand." Beatrice was taken into custody, screaming threats and curses. In the following days, the police investigation revealed the depth of her crimes. Forged documents, falsified signatures, secret bank accounts, where she had embezzled millions from the family business. Testimonies from former employees began to emerge, including that of the original family lawyer, who admitted to having been threatened by Beatrice years earlier. Gerald, in exchange for cooperating with justice, received a reduced sentence. He testified about how Beatrice had blackmailed him and forced him to be an accomplice to her crimes. Other employees, who had been unjustly dismissed, also returned to testify, and little by little, the web of lies Beatrice had woven for years was unraveled thread by thread. The story exploded in the media. Newspapers across the country emblazoned headlines about the woman who had held her mother-in-law prisoner for years to steal her fortune. Camilla was called a national heroine, but she always deflected, saying she had only done what any decent person would do. Mrs. Helen spent 3 weeks in the hospital, slowly recovering. Leonard did not leave her side for a single day, making up for the years. of forced absence. When she was finally discharged, she returned to Bellevue Manor, but everything had changed. The house that once seemed a cold and silent mausoleum was transformed. Mrs. Helen's paintings returned to the walls. The flowers Beatrice had ordered pulled out were replanted by Walter, who was rehired with a better salary and a formal apology from Leonard. Mrs. Irene returned to the kitchen, preparing Mrs. Helen's favorite meals. Roger continued as a driver, but now with a lighter smile on his face. And Camilla, the young woman who had arrived at that house merely seeking a job to support her family, was promoted to property manager. Leonard insisted that she continue her studies and paid for her business administration degree. She brought her mother and siblings to live in a comfortable house on the outskirts of Aspen, Colorado, where Mrs. Martha could finally receive adequate medical treatment. The basement was completely renovated and transformed into an art studio, where Mrs. Helen began to paint again, a passion she had abandoned years before. The west wing was reopened and became the most beautiful part of the house, with large windows that let in the sunlight. On a spring afternoon, 6 months after the rescue, Mrs. Helen was in the garden with Walter planting new rose bushes. Her hands, which once trembled with weakness, were now firmer. Her face, which had been a mask of pain and despair, now displayed a serene smile. Camilla approached, carrying a tray with tea and biscuits. She sat beside Mrs. Helen on the garden bench, and the two remained silent for a moment, simply enjoying the birdsong and the scent of the flowers. "You know, Camilla," Mrs. Helen said softly, "there are days when I still can't believe I'm free. I wake up in the middle of the night and it takes a few seconds to remember that I'm no longer in that dark basement. But you are free, Mrs. Helen, and you'll never go back there. Thanks to you. If you hadn't had the courage to investigate, to risk everything, I would have died there, and no one would ever know the truth." Camilla gently squeezed the elderly woman's wrinkled hand. "I couldn't let that happen. Not after seeing your face in that photograph, so full of life. I knew you deserved to be free." Mrs. Helen affectionately squeezed Camilla's hand. "You're not just my savior, dear. You're part of my family now, and always will be." Leonard came out of the house and walked over to them. He seemed like a different man. The depression that had consumed him for years had significantly lessened with therapy and his mother's comforting presence. His smile was genuine, his shoulders no longer stooped by the weight of guilt. "What are two of the most important women in my life conspiring about?" he asked playfully. "Just enjoying this beautiful day," Mrs. Helen replied, "and thanking heaven for having such a wonderful son and such a courageous friend." Leonard sat beside them. "Mother, Camilla, I want to thank both of you. Mother, for forgiving me for not realizing what was happening, and Camilla for having the courage I didn't have." Camilla smiled. "We all did what we could, Mr. Leonard. The important thing is that it worked." They sat there, the three of them together, as the sun began to set over the mountains of Aspen, Colorado, painting the sky with golden and pink hues. Bellevue Manor, which for so long had been a place of secrets and suffering, now breathed peace, love, and new beginnings. In the months that followed, life continued its dance of transformation. Beatrice was sentenced to a long prison term for kidnapping, identity fraud, embezzlement, and various other crimes. Her lawyers tried every possible appeal, but the evidence was overwhelming and the testimonies irrefutable. The company she had tried to steal was returned to the family, and Leonard, with Mrs. Helen's help and wisdom, began to rebuild the business with ethics and transparency. Many of the employees who had been unjustly dismissed were rehired and received generous compensation. Camilla and Mrs. Helen's story was told in documentaries, books, and even inspired a television series. But for both of them, what truly mattered was not fame or public recognition. It was freedom. The ability to wake up every day without fear, to walk through the manor's corridors without looking back, to feel the sun on their faces, and know that no dark secret lurked in the shadows. Camilla finished her college degree with honors and became a brilliant administrator. Her mother regained her health, and her siblings grew up in a safe and loving environment. She never forgot where she came from, nor the difficult days, but she also didn't let the past define her. She moved forward, Always with her head held high and a grateful heart, Mrs. Helen in turn became an advocate for victims of family abuse. She used her story to help others who suffered in silence, offering support, resources, and above all, hope. Her resilience inspired thousands of people across the country, and Leonard learned to value what truly mattered. Not money, not status, not the appearance of perfection, but love, truth, and the courage to do what is right, even when all seems lost. Bellevue Manor, once a luxurious prison, transformed into a symbol of liberation and new beginnings. Its walls, which once echoed only with silence and fear, now resonated with laughter, lively conversations, and the sound of rose bushes swaying in the wind. And whenever Camilla passed through the garden and saw Mrs. Helen tending her flowers, she felt deep gratitude for having had the courage not to turn her back on the suffering of others, for having chosen truth over convenience, for having proven that, even in the densest and most desperate shadows, the light of justice can and must prevail. The young woman who had crossed those imposing gates months earlier, seeking only a job, had found much more. She found purpose, family, courage, and the certainty that every life matters, every injustice deserves to be fought, and every human being has the power to make a difference in the world. As the sun set once more over Aspen, Colorado, painting the sky with colors of hope, Bellevue Manor remained there, no longer as a fortress of secrets, but as a beacon of light, proving that truth always finds its way, and that love, in the end, always wins. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Camilla and Mrs. Helen has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of courage, justice, and redemption, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what moment most impacted you in this narrative. Every day, we bring intense and true stories like this, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and remind us that we should never give up fighting for what is right. Thank you for joining us this far. We await you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions.